Fort Solis was a disappointing game. Actually, it was past a disappointment, and it was actually quite insulting as a player. Before I shit all over this game, I understand that it is an indie game, and this was the studio's first release. I myself love indie games, probably more so than big budget games. But this game disregards the most basic video game concepts. You see, Fort Solis is a bad game because of intentional design choices. Basic things such as character movement, position of the in-game camera, gameplay loops, level design, it's all thrown out the window. This plays like a game that was made by people that do not play video games. I do not believe the developers in charge of this project have played a game from start to finish within the last 10 years. Because if they had, they would not release a game in this state. But to be honest, this seems like a game that was made by people that don't even want to make video games, let alone play them. The Steam page of Fort Solis says this at the very top. The experience envisioned by the developers. A uniquely singular cinematic experience. The story is told across 4 chapters. Like a Netflix series, Fort Solis can be binged in one intense session or played chapter by chapter like an episodic TV show. So that right there should tell you the game's gonna suck. I mean, first off, why would the developers compare their video game to a Netflix series? Do they not realize that video games can be a superior form of media than a shitty Netflix show? I mean, if they wanted to make a Netflix episodic TV show, then they should have done that instead. And you know what? This game would have fit in perfect in the vast sea of garbage Netflix original series shows. When this game was announced, it was touted as being a sci-fi, horror, psychological thriller. They even compared it to being like Dead Space.
Studios. And so, just like anybody else, we got reached out. James Tinsdale with this brand new studio said, we'd like for you to consider being a part of this game. And he walked me through a very brief description of what the experience was going to be like. And in the very beginning, he said, we want this to feel, it's a tight thriller. We want it to feel like Dead Space meets Duncan Jones' Moon. And I was like, sign me up. I'm into that, absolutely.
And what are we going to do in this game?
Yeah, the verbs are always important. So we're going to let the game speak for itself. We'll be showing you more later on. But this is a game where you as the player, you're going to be exploring, you're going to be discovering. Like we said, it's a very tight thriller. So you're moving very fast-paced through this world. There'll be multiple locations, multiple ways for you to traverse, which we're excited to show you about. And then the narrative is a huge element to this. They didn't waste...
Well, the gameplay is non-existent. And while it is a walking simulator, and I actually like walking simulators, they can be interesting and really fun games. And you know, although they're walking simulators, there's usually some kind of gameplay, whether it's puzzles or exploration or sneaking past enemies or making important choices. There's usually some sort of gameplay loop. But Fort Solis has no kind of gameplay, besides walk from point A to point B and press X. Your character cannot run, or jump, or do anything but walk. And even though you are in an environment where there is a murderer stalking the facility, your character just walks at a snail's pace for the entire game.
Fuck this. Fuck staying calm.
And the game is so short already that I think limiting the character to only walking at a painfully slow pace was a conscious design choice made to artificially extend the duration of the game. Because since you only move from point A to point B, if you had the option to run or jog, the time to completion would be halved. When I first played this game, I played for a few hours and then went to bed. And the next day, when I went back to play again, I remembered that my objective from the previous session was to go to the greenhouse. I just so happened to remember passing 2 big doors to the greenhouse earlier. So I walked to the other side of the map where the greenhouse was just to find out I could not enter those doors. I needed to enter through different doors through the underground passage to get into the greenhouse. So normally this wouldn't be that big of a deal. You would just run back the way you came. However, in this game where your character can only walk at an ungodly slow pace, walking all the way back was shit. And you might be thinking, well, why didn't you just reload from your last save? Well, that's because there is no save load system in this game. And I understand why some games remove the manual save load system. You don't want the player save scumming after they've made a crucial story choice or maybe fail at some event that changes the story. But this game has neither of those things. But they want to keep the illusion that they do. So basic shit like loading your last checkpoint doesn't exist. So I walked my ass slowly back the way I came while looking at this stupid walk animation. Like, why is your hand in front of your face? You have a helmet on, dumbass. The wind isn't in your eyes. Put your fucking hand down. Moving the character in this game is like oddly hard to do. This game was released on Unreal Engine 5 and I refuse to believe that there's not some free character controller script that would have worked 10 times better than whatever this shit is. Basic movement feels like it's devastating to the game. Turning your character is just unnaturally hard. I guess they don't want you to turn, they just want you to walk forward, walk straight, forever. There's also box collision on every object, so you get these moments all throughout the game where the character just gets caught on an invisible collider. I mean, at this point, they should just remove the collision and let my foot clip through the ground. That would be way more immersive than me just stopping like I ran into a brick wall. I mean, I might not even notice if my foot clipped through the rock, but this shit, like you notice it, you feel it. Beside walking around, you can sometimes walk up to random doodads and gizmos and interact with them, and the character will make some stupid comment. The game actually had more substance and gameplay than this edition. It might have been a nice little touch. However, when all there is to do in the game is to inspect random items, it actually starts to get really fucking annoying, and a lot of the interactions start to make the main character seem like he's brain damaged.
For you? You could do a lot worse.
Look at that little guy go.
What the fuck?
It's ongoing.
In fact, all throughout the game, the main character says really dumb shit.
Oxygen reserves are still active.
Well, the backup generator maintains oxygen levels. Did you think they just powered the lights?
Well, not anymore.
I mean, he's supposed to be the lead engineer. Like, and he doesn't know what the backup generator does? Wow, what an immersive cinematic experience this game is. The position of the camera is awful. You cannot ever see what is in front of your character. It's so bad, even the large hallways, you still can't see shit. I looked for a field of view slider to hopefully fix this, but there is not one in the settings. And when you're looking around an area, your character's head does not follow where you look. So if you're in a dimly lit area and you want to look at something near or on the floor or up above you, well, you can't, because the flashlight is on the character's helmet and it just looks straight, no matter what. As a horror game, it's a miserable failure. There's not one single scare throughout the entire game. They really should change this to be like, instead of genre sci-fi horror, to be interactive audiobook or something, because it's not a game. It really isn't. There's no gameplay loop. There is no gameplay. The only thing I liked about this game was the audio. I thought it was well done. The sound effects, music, overall ambient sounds, those were really good, done well. I didn't care for the voice acting at all. It seemed over the top and just really forced. They shoved voice lines into everything. I guess they had to because there's really nothing else there besides walking. But the characters make jokes throughout the whole game, which is just fucking stupid. Even after discovering there is a murderer on the loose inside the base that they are trapped in, they're still just cracking jokes, haha. Now the sci-fi. when you make a science fiction story, whether it's a book or film or game or whatever, you always want to have your world grounded in believable science. This game takes place on Mars, which has 1/3 of the gravity of Earth. Yet when the characters walk around, they don't act like that at all. They walk around normal like they would on Earth. They don't seem to be affected at all by light gravity. They look like and act like they're under the same gravity we are on Earth. I mean, this guy has trouble climbing this wall, even though he should only weigh about 50 pounds. It just really broke all the immersion for me right away, right off the bat. The overall plot is just generic trash. There isn't really much to say about it because it's so simple and so short. A doctor goes crazy on Mars, murders people because they're infected with something. That's about it. Overall, this game just sucks. I wish it didn't, but it does. It is incredibly boring and tedious with little to no gameplay. If you're looking for a good indie horror game, avoid this game at all costs. This has been David with Consternation Evolved. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.